All right, welcome everyone to this Kaplan MCAT Bootcamp. I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you this evening. This is one of my favorite things to get to do as a Kaplan teacher is to get to meet new students at the beginning of their journeys as they're beginning to get ready for the MCAT and beginning to get ready for med school, but really beginning that pathway. So I am just absolutely thrilled to be here. I'll be your Kaplan on-camera teacher running you through this boot camp. My name is Brian. I am I'm a Kaplan teacher. Teaching's what I do, and I will constantly refer to being a teacher because it's just part of my identity. I am always thrilled to work with so many pre-med students because you guys all have something special, and it just thrills me to be here working with the students who have the drive to save lives and help people the way you do. So I'm really looking forward to this evening. Joining me, we have a number of teachers who will be talking with you in the chat and answering your questions. So I want to thank them. They're actually my favorite part of being a live online teacher for Kaplan, is that they are awesome at taking care of you. So they are there, and they will be taking care of any holes that I leave because they're just awesome. So absolutely my favorite part about being an online teacher is them. So what we're going to do now, well, let me just show you what we're going to do now. We've got an agenda because that's what agendas are for. We have welcome and introduction, kind of already started that part, but there's a good chance a number of you are brand new to the MCAT as of today or as of this week. That happens a lot, where there are many students, some of you have maybe even already taken the MCAT, and some of you, this is literally your first exposure to the whole process. So I need to make sure we all have at least some basic starting level of what is the MCAT and why it's important. So we'll be talking about that. But then the real meat of why we're here, strategy and content instruction, in that order of importance. First and foremost, the MCAT is a strategy critical thinking test. So we'll be looking at strategies, and at the same time, as a science teacher, I can't help but unleash on some content with you. So I'll be going over that as well. And I'm just really excited because we have some of my favorite content built into today's lesson. Then we'll do a discussion of plus coaching and the other things Kaplan has to offer. That I just want to make sure that you are taking full advantage of everything that you can get to help you prepare for the MCAT, one way or the other, with Kaplan, the free stuff that we offer, whatever. I want to make sure you are using all of the resources at your disposal. And then I'm going to hang out and I'm going to answer some questions that I know many of you will have. So we'll just hang out for a while and make sure everybody has what they need. Now, one thing is that there should be a form there for you to be filling out for entry into a giveaway. So please make sure you do that at some point before the end, because our giveaway today is an hour of coaching with a Kaplan teacher. That is a very, very valuable giveaway. That is, in terms of monetary value, that is one of our highest monetary value giveaways. So please make sure that you are registering for that you're filling out that form to register for that giveaway. So please, please, please make sure you do that, because I don't want anybody to miss out like I do. I say at the end the name that we have chosen, and you wind up going, I forgot to do that. I don't want that to happen to anybody. All right, so let's start talking about the MCAT first and foremost, and wondering, why do you have to take it? So the MCAT is important, but the question becomes, how important is it really? And so we wanted to be able to answer that instead of qualitatively by saying, you know, the MCAT's really important. It's one of the most important factors. We surveyed. We asked med school admissions officers, and so we have this data that we've gone back. So the schools that have ranked it first, so the most important admissions factor at more than half of the med schools that we surveyed said MCAT score, followed by a little less than a quarter saying undergraduate GPA. And you can bet that of the ones that didn't say MCAT score was first, and that other little less than half, it was up there for a bunch of them. It was, if it wasn't first, it was probably second or third. So keep that in mind while you're going through your MCAT preparation. This is not something to rush. This is not something to rush. So we've put a poll in down there where I want to ask, when are you taking the MCAT? Because this is actually an incredibly important question. And there's lots of variety to when students take it and their mentality behind when they take it. When you are taking the MCAT, many students want to have their applications in at the beginning of June because that's when rolling admissions begin. So many students will want to test in by May. But if you are not properly prepared, you don't want to go in and take the MCAT and have the MCAT score, your MCAT score kill your application, because it is one of the biggest, to get vague on you. It's the second biggest application killer is a poor MCAT score. So don't rush it. You want to make sure that you are doing what needs to be done. And we generally recommend 300 to 350 hours of preparation for the MCAT. So ask yourself, am I doing what I need to do to be successful? Am I doing what I need to do to be one of the 2 in 5 and not one of the 3 in 5? So what I mean by that is, in terms of applicants, applicant numbers are going up. They have been going up year to year. 40%, and 40% I always think sounds good, but then if you think about it, that's out of 5 people, that's 2. 2 in 5 wind up getting in. 3 in 5 do not. I want every single one of you to be one of the 2 in 5 and not one of the 3 in 5. And that means taking the MCAT seriously. All of the rest of your application components are important. I've personally known people with killer MCAT scores who did not do what they needed to in terms of their other application components, namely experience and recommendations and everything, who had to take a gap year and gain some other experience. But the MCAT is essential. It is your best shot at being one of that 2 in 5, being one of that 40%. Now, I always think this statistic is very vague, 40%, because we all sit there and go, well, I'm not 40%. My chance is not 40% because, and you think about the different things you have going on. 2 best indicators are GPA and MCAT score. So we've got a lovely grid here for what your GPA is, what your MCAT score is, and the rate of acceptance into medical college based on those 2 things. And of course, there are places where the ability to get in is above 40%. So if you are basically somewhere along this line, yeah, sure, you're better than that 40%. But that's a very small portion of this. And if you're up there, great. But you're great, and you still don't even have a 100% chance. Even look up here. Better than a 3.8 or better, and better than a 5.18, and we're still only at 87.5%. So you need a good, well-rounded application. At the same time, I want you to take hope from this. I don't want you to look at that and go, oh man, my chance is 1%. I look at that and go, basically everybody does have some degree of chance. The blanks here indicate there was literally no data for people applying in that range, but this means that people did manage to get in at these lower percentage, or at these lower scores and lower MCAT, or lower GPAs and lower MCAT scores. So keep that in mind, but you always want to be moving yourself up that way. And the thing is, it is not easy at your point in your academic career, whether you've already graduated or whether you're junior or senior. It is not easy to change your GPA a lot. GPAs over time develop a lot of inertia. They develop a great deal of inertia. The thing that you have the most control over is your MCAT score. This is why the MCAT is something that must not be neglected. So you need to invest in yourself, invest in improving that MCAT score if you if you want to improve it, if you want to improve your odds of getting into med school, you have to be willing to invest the time and the effort, be willing to invest in yourself, focusing on the MCAT score. And to some extent, that sometimes involves neglecting, maybe doing everything you could have to make sure you have that perfect 4.0. Because if you can make your GPA move by 0.02 versus 0.03 versus your MCAT score move by 5, 7, 8 points, there's a bigger difference with the MCAT score. That is the thing that you have the most control of, that has the most impact. That's what we want to keep in mind. All right, so just had to emphasize the importance of the MCAT for you. Now, for those of you that are brand new to the MCAT, I am thrilled to be here, as you probably have those "what just happened to me" reaction of the questions we're about to see. And I like to think we're going to ease into it to some extent, because we're going to start with just some regular questions, the type of questions you would expect to see on a science test. Though I will say we're starting with some physics fun, which is my favorite, but I often don't see a lot of students who agree with me that physics is the best science subject ever. Just not as many people as right as I am, because it's physics, it's the best. So just keep that in mind. And I will also tell you, in college I hated physics. Coming to understand it made me love it. So just want to tell you, it is possible, no matter how much you dislike a topic or content, you can learn to love it. But let's just get started here. Our goals today, I want to make sure that you are learning to use the answer choices. So they're testing you on a multiple choice test. I told you, I'm a teacher. I hate multiple choice tests. When I in my classroom and am designing an assessment, I never think, oh, the best way to find out whether my students truly understand this is to give them a multiple choice test. Never crosses my mind. I always think, you know, I could give them a multiple choice test if I'm feeling lazy about grading, but then I don't know whether they actually understood it. Because a multiple choice test, there are answer choices there, there's trickery to it, and there's a lot that you can gain from just using the answer choices. And it goes beyond your actual scientific understanding and becomes about strategy. So I want us to take full advantage of the MCAT from the fact that they have resorted to giving you a multiple choice test. So we're going to learn to look at those answer choices, use those answer choices, and be strategic about the approach to the question. We're going to use patterns. Patterns are your friend. I will confess, I have never gotten every single question right on an MCAT. Like, I've never sat down for even any section and gotten every single question right. But there have been times when I've not known something and still been able to say the right answer is this because of the pattern of the answer choices. Like, it is something that you can very, very consistently do. And we'll also be thinking about level of detail. And this is something that is really essential to your studying. I have met too many students who have come to Kaplan late in their study process for the MCAT. And they have devoted literally hundreds of hours to studying and studying and studying and studying content, trying to take a deep dive into every single thing there. And they do the same thing when working through the MCAT, reading passages and trying to answer questions. They try and treat it like they have to thoroughly know absolutely everything. We always say that the MCAT is a mile wide, but an inch deep. You need to know a lot about a lot of different things, but about those things, you only have to know a little bit. So you only have to know a little bit of depth. So those students that spend a long time making sure they know this topic really thoroughly, that doesn't help them any more on the MCAT than the student who spent half a day making sure that they knew the main points of that topic. And then they were good and they moved on. And that student with a more efficient study method does better on the MCAT. Just that's the way it works. All right, so we're also going to generally speak about attacking problems, which means this is going to be different than the way you have been trained. As a teacher, I told you I'd keep referring to that. As a teacher, I work with a bunch of other teachers. And as much as I love my colleagues, I know some things about them. For instance, I know that in no teacher preparation program ever do they ever devote a single second to teaching the teachers who will go on to teach public school how to instruct students and how to do better on a standardized test. It's just not there. It is nowhere in any teacher education program. But that doesn't stop these teachers because they want to help students. They want to feel like they can contribute and do something because they're teachers and they really do care about you as students. So we want to make sure that you aren't taking their advice of read the question carefully, read each answer choice carefully, and choose the best answer of the 4 answer choices. Because that's awful, awful advice. It was actually advice written by the test makers that they told teachers to read to you that teachers wound up thinking was good advice for some reason. So we are going to learn how to attack problems. Whether you know the content or not, we're going to see how to attack the problems. So, and we're going to make sure overall strategy is always the #1 thing for the way you attack. There you started doing it. When that question went on screen, you start doing the same thing you like to start doing, reading the question carefully, reading the answers carefully, and trying to choose an answer. So instead, I'm going to put this question up, and I'm going to cover the question. I'm going to cover the question. And I want you to just look at it and consider what patterns you see in the answer choices. Consider the patterns you see here in these answers. And this is a wonderful, what we call 2x2. This is a 2x2 set of answer choices, because all of the answer choices are different in 2 places, and there are 2 options at each of those 2 places. 2 times 2 is 4 answer choices that can be derived from that. So they're all either increase or decrease, and they're all by 3 or by 9. Increase or decrease by 3 or by 9. So this tells us many things about the question. It tells us a lot of what the question is actually asking. For one thing, if we have an option of, well, something's going to either increase or decrease, one major likelihood here is that we're looking at whether there's a direct or inverse relationship between 2 things in the question stem. So I see increase or decrease, and I'm immediately thinking, well, I'm going to be identifying whether something's a direct or an inverse relationship. And then I don't look at 3 and 9 and say 3 and 9. I look at 3 and 9, and instead I see that as 3 and 3 squared. So what I'm really being asked is this an inverse or direct relationship? And is this an inverse or direct linear or inverse direct squared? All right. So now we're ready to actually look at the question. Going up to that question, I'm not even going to show you the whole thing at once, because questions have a bad habit of giving you too much information, and the real question occurs at the end. So I'm just going to show you this part. Okay, I know the variables now that I'm being asked for the relationship between electric potential energy and bond length. As much as this might at a glance look like chemistry because they're talking about bonds, electric potential energy's relationship to a distance like length, this is physics. This this is one of my favorite physics topics. I just can't restrain myself on this physics topic. So I'm going to give you a little bit of content. You do want to know the electrostatic equations. So I'm going to make sure you know them by doing this. First and foremost, you already know Coulomb's law, or once you hear Coulomb's law, you're like, yeah, that sounds really familiar, because Coulomb's law is directly analogous to the law of universal gravitation. The law of universal gravitation is the force of gravity is equal to g, the constant, times the mass of one thing times the mass of another thing, divided by the distance between them squared. That's gravity. For electrostatics, it's the force of attraction or repulsion is equal to a constant times the charge of one times the charge of the other, divided by the distance between them squared. So it's the same equation, just with different variables. The same equation with different variables. So kq over r squared, kqq over r squared versus gmm over r squared. And that's force. From there, you need to know that, and I'm going to define my variables here. U is potential energy. E is electric field strength. And V is electric potential. For when I fill these in here, this goes U, E, V. And when you go to the right from Coulomb's law, you cancel R, because force times distance gives energy, so going to the right cancels R, cancels one of the R's. Meanwhile, going downward cancels little q, the charge that is being affected. Knowing that, you can derive any of these. So from Coulomb's law, we can get to electric potential energy, U, well, cancel R. U equals KQQ over R. As I fight with my stylus, sorry. E is equal to KQ over R squared. And V is equal to, now we've canceled both at this point, and we're down to 1Q and 1R over R. They all derive from knowing Coulomb's law and knowing how to work around this square. Practice drawing that 4 or 5 times, then come back in a little while, practice drawing it a couple more times, and practice it one time every once in a while up through test day, and you will always remember all of these equations. And you will always remember, because right now we're being asked electric potential energy and distance. So we're being asked right now about that top right square. We're being asked whether it is a direct or an inverse relationship between U and R, and whether it is squared, so first power or second power on R. Well, now that you know that equation, and you confidently know that equation, well, U and R, that's an inverse relationship because R is in the denominator. And it is going to be not squared, so it'll just be 3. So if they made it 3 times shorter, R went down. R goes down, U goes up. So shorter means it's an increase, but it's only by 3 times. The correct answer would be C. Whoa, wait a second. I never even showed you the beginning of the question. If the bonds between the 2 phosphate groups in ATP is 9 times 10 to the negative 11 meters, by how much would it change if it were 3 times shorter? Oof. Right there, you see what they're doing, right? they're trying to make you think, one, this is about chemistry, two, that it's about maybe biochemistry with ATP, and if you do see through all of that, the third possibility they're trying to get you to consider is, do I have to actually do the math and run this through in an equation? The only number here that matters is the number 3. 3 times shorter means 3 times more energy. And that is it. Don't let them scare you with all of the additional information they give you. So please, steal that, I always call it the Punnett square of electrostatics, and learn to love physics like I do. But now let's go on to another question. This time, I'm going to take the training wheels off just a little bit. I'll put the question up there. What I want you to do is glance at the answers, and you restrain yourself from just reading the question. So glance down at those answers. We see that same thing. We're like, okay, maybe it's a direct or an inverse relationship because I see increase and decrease. But I also see increase, then decrease, and I see remain the same. So maybe this isn't, maybe this is inverse and direct or a neutral relationship, but it seems a little odd for that. And that answer choice C, increase, then decrease, that throws in the possibility there of time. What is the relevant time frame to this question? So now as we go up to the question, we want to know what is the thing we're looking at for the relationship between, and what is the relevant time frame? Once again, when we go up to the question, read the first word of the question first. Which is the first word of the question? And I mean that not as a question, I mean that as a statement. Which is the first word of the question here? A lot of times it's what is the first word of the question, or why is the first word of the question. It's the last sentence of the question is the actual question. Which the following would happen to the rate of ATP consumption immediately after a cell is moved to a hypotonic environment? There's a big, huge, monstrous keyword there. And you are allowed to highlight within the question stems. You can highlight really anywhere based on some changes they've made. So I'm going to highlight here for us that word immediately, because that's a strong keyword to notice right now. When I see that word immediately, I immediately eliminate any answer choice that answers beyond immediately. And yes, on test day, you can strike through answer choices. I strike through C. Increase, then decrease, that's not immediately. That's talking about more than just immediately. So that cannot be the right answer. But now I'm being asked about, will the cell consume ATP if it's put in a hypotonic environment? I get the feeling the background information they gave me was supposed to set up this question. So unlike the ATP in the previous question, here I am actually going to go up to the top. But I will tell you, the sodium-potassium pump is testable knowledge. This is testable knowledge. So they absolutely expect you to already know this. Here, they're almost trying to slow you down by giving you more information than you need, but it's also helpful. So if we read this, we're introduced to the sodium-potassium pump. 3 sodium out, 2 potassium in for each ATP used. And the cells can use the pump to maintain cell volume. All right, it was all stuff I already knew, but they've reminded me of this process for a reason. So I'm just going to draw a cell. On test day, I want you to be as lazy as possible. But my definition of lazy is different from a lot of people's definition of lazy. Some people think of lazy and be like, oh, you don't take notes, you don't draw things out. No, then you're trying to do it all up here. Work up here is way harder than work on your scratch paper, on your scratch booklet. So be lazy about keeping stuff up here. If it's something really easy to draw, just draw it. Then you don't have to be trying to remember it anymore. It's just there. So When I draw this, I say hypotonic. A hypotonic environment means that the cell is hypertonic because it's a relative term. So that means I have lots of solute inside the cell and just a little bit of solute outside the cell. That's what it means to be hyper inside the cell and for the environment to be hypotonic. So we can rephrase this question, and it is good to rephrase questions in your own mind. So this question now instead is asking me, does the sodium-potassium pump improve this cell's situation? If so, if it improves the situation, ATP use is going to increase. If it makes the situation worse, ATP use is going to decrease. If it has no effect, it'll just stay the same. So, go ahead and let me know in the poll which one matches what will happen here. All right. Got a great percentage of you right now choosing the right answer. The key thing is that 3 sodium out, 2 potassium in, and osmosis. Osmosis doesn't care what the solute is. Osmotic pressure is a colligative property. It just cares that there's solute there. It doesn't care what it is. So, by moving 3 out and 2 in, that means a net movement of 1 out for each ATP hydrolyzed. Moving these out eventually makes it so that, hey, now the cell is isotonic to its environment. That's an improvement in its situation. All right, and now as I have a large majority of you saying, that means the correct answer must be A. It's going to use the sodium-potassium pump to keep itself from dying, because otherwise water would rush into that cell and its volume would go up until it lysed. So that was, we just did a Chem Phys and a Biochem discrete question. So each of those was a discrete question. That means that you're just answering questions more like you're accustomed to on most standardized tests. But now, let's take a look at passage-based questions. This is the thing that if this is your first exposure to the MCAT, you're about to see this and go, I thought this was a science test. Well, don't worry, it's okay. It's a critical thinking test. And we're going to help you learn the necessary critical thinking. And we're going to point out that there is still a large amount of scientific reasoning still essential for this. So, we've got a passage here. The passage has a figure with it. So I glance at the figure and I say, okay, interesting figure. Not a lot I glean from it right away. I just see normal and then 2 other things. And I start glancing through. the passage. I don't do a thorough read. If you take a look at that first paragraph, and if I ask you just to tell me, what is the main point of that first paragraph? Why is it there? And I told you to read as quickly as possible, you'd be able to tell me in just a few seconds. You'll get through that and you'll wind up telling me, this one looks like it's about pathological conditions that inhibit neurons on muscles, for example, myasthenia gravis. So, neuromuscular problems, example, myasthenia gravis. That's not what I wrote, but that's what the abbreviation means. It's worth keeping track of, but all of the details of myasthenia gravis, all of the details of what they say in that paragraph, it's still going to be there when you get to the questions. You just need to know where to go back and look, if at all. We go into the second paragraph. Another disease that causes, okay, what's the other disease? Lambert-Eaton. I write the letters L-E. Having seen that another disease, I look for what the other disease is. I say, okay, Lambert-Eaton is this disease. I mark that down, and I scan through the rest, and I see nothing that jumps out at me as important, as indicated by keywords. That's one of the most important things we teach our students to look for, is the types of words and phrases that indicate that new important information is coming. Then as we begin this third paragraph, we have, oh, MG and LE are both. So I'm thinking compare and contrast here. Oh, I see the word difficult. Differential diagnosis. One of the ways the two can be distinguished. So distinguishing between them. Compare and contrast the two, or distinguish the two. So distinguish MG versus LE. And now that I've got that background, okay, this is about neuromuscular problems with two examples, I glance at the figure again and I'm like, oh, so I've got information about, so repetitive nerve stimulation in those two diseases. We'll see if a question requires me to use that information. So that said, I'm hoping you're sitting there going, but wait, aren't we going to read the passage? Reading's overrated. We don't need to do a thorough reading of that passage because there is far too much useless information in every passage you will ever come across on the MCAT for you to bother reading the whole thing. You just want to know it well enough to know what's where. So, that said, let's see how that works at the question level. So we've got our first question. I don't like telling you to do different things at different times. We've got a question. I still want you to do the same thing. Glance down at the answers. But these are way more complicated than the answers we saw before. But I see inactivates, increases the concentration of, decreases, and allows for. So changes all jump out at me as a glance. And I see answer choices that are about neuromuscular junction, synapse, acetylcholine synapse, and calcium channel at junction. Okay, so changes at and around the synapse. The answer choices, and this is not a thorough read. At a glance, I see this and go, oh, changes at or around the synapse. All right, so with that pattern of the answer choices in mind, now I go up to the question. And the question being just one sentence, we do read the whole thing. Why does the administration of medication that inhibits acetylcholine esterase improve the symptoms of myasthenia gravis? So, rephrase the question. We know too much about these answer choices to try and think through a big, difficult why question. Why questions are big. Science, and this is coming as a science teacher who's put way too much thought into this and discussed with other science professors and science educators and science educators. Science is driven by why questions, but all we ever really do with the why questions is get a closer and closer approximation to the right answer. So why questions are actually really, really tough. So what I want to do is I want to turn this into what happens at or around the synapse, using those answer choices, if you inhibit ACHAs, acetylcholinesterase. So I'm going to ask you that question instead. What happens at or around the synapse when you inhibit acetylcholinesterase? And before you look at those answer choices now, notice we haven't gone back to those answer choices, and I should have covered them up. I'm sorry. Now that we've asked that question more simply, I want you to think of that right now. Acetylcholinesterase. Well, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter in the synapse, at the neuromuscular junction specifically. Acetylcholinesterase breaks down that neurotransmitter. So think through what that means and then look in the poll, or look in the answer choices. Find the one that matches what would happen if you inhibit the thing that breaks down acetylcholine and choose it. And don't read the other answers. You click that poll as soon as you can. As soon as you've found one that says what will happen, I want you to click that answer and don't read the others. That is the hardest thing you can do, but it is probably the most powerful. All right. So acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter at the junction. So if you inhibit acetylcholinesterase, so if acetylcholinesterase gets inhibited, that's going to lead into an increase in acetylcholine. That's a good first order prediction. So let's see if we can find that in the answer choices. Is there an answer choice that says increase acetylcholine? Okay, inactivates no. Increase the concentration of acetylcholine at the synapse. So here's where we want to be careful for a moment. They a lot of times will have like a spot-on right answer in the first half of an answer choice and then ruin it with the second half of the answer choice. So we do have to read this complete answer, allowing for greater stimulation of unaffected receptors. Well, if you have more acetylcholine, you are going to stimulate more receptors. So yeah, you're done. Choose B. Throw a little party. You got it right. You didn't read C or D because C and D are only there to trap you. So we do not want to even bother with those. So correct answer, B, keep going. Don't argue with wrong answer choices. Choose the one that matches your prediction and keep going. Next question of this set. Ooh, people who. People who. All right. Now I get to talk a little bit more about the design of the MCAT. When they redid the MCAT 3 years ago now, they made a very deliberate choice to increase the incorporation of science. And I don't mean like science content, I mean science as science. Science as the systematic study of the natural world and the processes that govern it. Science. As in designing experiments, gathering information, thinking about how to learn from the things you see. So that includes things like sample and population, which when I see people who, I think first, okay, is this a sample versus population problem? So I study this group, is that applicable to another group? Or the other possibility, or is this a experiment description where I'm being given experimental group and control group? Those are really the big main possibilities of a people who set of answer choices. So that said, I see people who related to our diseases, and I'm going to do the thing that I said I should have done before. That goes away. The answer choices, you get the pattern, and then you're done reading them until you have a thought up here for what the right answer should be. Which of the following control groups, notice where I'm starting and reading this question. Which of the following control groups would provide the most accurate information to help determine the efficacy of this new medication? What is an ideal control group? That's what this question is asking. What does a control group look like in comparison to your experimental group? This is getting at the heart of an experiment. Experiments are set up so that there's a dependent variable and an independent variable. The independent variable is the difference between your experimental group and your control group. The dependent variable is what you measure. And everything else, you want to eliminate any possible confounding variables, other things that could have caused the change in effects that you see, and any other possible interference or bad design issues, which is typically confounding variables. So if we want a control group, well, really the control group and the experimental group are going to be the exact same group. Who do you test a new medication for treating myasthenia gravis on? Well, you want people who have myasthenia gravis, and you want them to be the exact same people you would test with this medication, but you're not going to give them the medication. You're going to give them either a placebo or the gold standard. That's the way it works. But this is tricky, so let me put this up. Now, look through those answer choices and tell me in the poll. I'm hoping you're looking at this going, okay, if I'm testing a myasthenia gravis drug, I don't want to be testing it on people who have Lambert-Eaton. That would make sense. That wouldn't make any sense. And I really want people who have myasthenia gravis, otherwise it makes no sense to test my drug on them, so A is out. So first I eliminate based on, I only want to answer choices that say they have myasthenia gravis. So C and D. Differences between C and D, well, these are perfect opposite answer choices, so it's a pretty good thing to go on. Whether or not they have been treated with another drug. My question here is, which would be ideal and which one would be non-ideal? AKA, which one would introduce a confounding variable? Another drug would be a confounding variable. At that point, my experimental group and my control group should both be D. And then I just give either a placebo or the gold standard to the control group and my new treatment to the experimental group. So choose D and be done. Choose D and boom, we're done with that one. So, on to 2 more questions. Answer choices. I see things about neurons and the synapse. Action potential, acetylcholine, neurotransmitter, calcium efflux. So I see things about neurotransmitter and the synapse. Then what causes this weakness? So, okay, what weakness? What are we talking about here? In LE, the attack of autoantibodies on calcium channels in presynaptic cells results in muscle weakness. So, okay, I need to know how calcium is related to anything having to do with the synapse and the neurotransmitter and the action potential. So I have to rack my brain and go, okay, what do I know about this? Thankfully, the neuron is one of my favorite topics, and I know that, oh, when that action potential gets to the synaptic terminal, that action potential triggers an influx of calcium 2 plus. And that calcium 2 plus causes the exocytosis of the neurotransmitter containing vesicles. So actually directly causes the release of the neurotransmitter. So think that through. And tell me in the poll which answer choice tells you what would be the effect, not what causes this weakness or why are they weak. Instead, the question we were asking is, what is the effect of attacking calcium channels? What is the effect of attacking those calcium channels? Tell me in the poll. All right. So there is a big trap here. The big main trap is D. Calcium efflux is inhibited. I am actually really impressed that the majority of you didn't get trapped by that. Just because the question is about calcium isn't asking, calcium efflux isn't what this is about. It's about calcium influx. That's the important process here. So If we attack calcium channels, then that calcium doesn't go in. If that calcium doesn't go in, it doesn't bind to the vesicles and cause exocytosis. Doesn't cause exocytosis, then you don't get neurotransmitter release. So you're going to have reduced neurotransmitter release. Don't try and prove why A, B, and D are wrong. Follow through what you know. You want to have some thorough content knowledge here. This is to the depth that you do want to know, to be able to say, well, if you don't have calcium, you don't get neurotransmitter release. Is there an answer choice that says that? Yes, choose it, move on. And I hope you're all thinking, wow, we've barely used that passage at all. I'm glad we barely looked at that thing and barely read it. Oh, look, it's the figure. Still glad we didn't read it. It's the figure. We can look back at it. So we want to interpret figure 1, but the answer choices are about LE or MG, and we see weakness. Weakness. So we see changes in amount of weakness. At the neuromuscular junction, getting weak would mean less response there. So I want you to look at these graphs, look at which one really has a change, and what happens to the amount of weakness based on that change. And then tell me again in the poll. You guys impressed me on the last one, so I really want to see how you do here with less of me leading you. All right. What I'm seeing is that we're saying, well, MG is the one with the serious change. MG is the one with the serious change. So that at the very least gets us to say, okay, it's not going to be A and it's not going to be D. This one's really, it's about a change occurring. The change is with myasthenia gravis. And that's on the MCAT, they will go for the significant changes. They're not going to test little differences like that little difference you see at the beginning of LE. They're not going to call that significant enough for you to notice it. So we're between B and C. And oh, it decreases. So we should pick the one that says decreasing, right? Oh, that's decreased muscle response. That's increased weakness. That's increased weakness. So I am once again impressed, though. Despite the trap of that decreasing, I still got a significant majority of you choosing B. So that's really good. So right there, we had almost 80% of you going with B and avoiding that trap of C, saying decreasing weakness. It's an increase in weakness as you get decreased muscle response. Whew. And yes, that would be an example of what a science passage could look like on the MCAT. That there are some that are more difficult, there are some that are less difficult, there are some much like that. One important thing is to get yourself exposure to as many as you can, because science passages come in all different sizes and shapes with different figures, graphs, tables, experiments. You want to be well versed in the variety of forms that science passages can take, and the way that being efficient in your attack of those helps no matter what the form that passage took was. But now, what we're going to do for our last bit of strategy that I want to go over, it's time to go into cars. I love cars, and I love the passage we're about to do. But it tends to intimidate a lot of students. And I got to talk about this for a moment. The reason why cars is the most important section to you. Cars is the most heavily weighted section on the MCAT by a majority of medical colleges, because it is specifically absent whether you happen to have memorized these details, it is all about critical thinking. I mean, CARS stands for Critical Analysis and Reasoning Skills. It's not verbal reasoning anymore like it was on the old MCAT, which was the worst name ever because it wasn't verbal in any way, shape, or form. And it's not reading comprehension because they're not just checking whether you comprehend what you read. This is critical analysis and reasoning skills as applied to new information. And that new information comes in the form of a humanities or social sciences passage. So we do need to adjust the way that you read these, though. So when you look at this passage that I'm going to put in front of you, don't just start reading. Once again, don't just start reading. Instead, I want you thinking about, in this first paragraph, what is the most important word or phrase? I want you to go through, take your finger, and on test day, you're not allowed to touch the screen, by the way. You're not allowed to do it. But I still want you to do this right now. Take your finger and put it on the screen, the most important word or phrase in paragraph 1. Just paragraph 1, don't go anywhere beyond that. Most important word or phrase in paragraph 1. All right. And I can sense where all your fingers are on the screen right there. And there's a couple of you that got it. But most people tend, on this passage, to focus on angels and devils and partisans and divine, these terms that are just not actually that important. When you're looking for important words and phrases in a passage, you want to be focusing on words that indicate a difference, words that indicate something new, and words that emphasize the author, or that indicate the author is emphasizing something. So what we see here, if you said complicated, I'd have a hard time disagreeing with you, but I say clearly. That right there is insight into the brain of the author. So the brain of the author is what the questions are going to be asking about as well. So if they're saying things are clearly more complicated, oh, the author thinks this. So the author thinks that first sentence is wrong, so I should also think that first sentence is wrong. I want to pay attention to what the author thinks is right. And this is an awesome new change they made to the MCAT. I really appreciate this, but I don't want you to overuse it. But in CARS, there's a tendency for the authors to be overly verbose. So you want to sometimes be able to parse down a sentence to, well, what are the subject, object, and verb of this sentence? Angels are partisans. Ignore the not of good, but of not divine creation, but of creation. Angels are partisans of creation. Angels are partisans of creation. So angels represent creation. The rest are adjectives or asides. So angels are, or angels equal creation. The devil, on the other hand, so I scratched that away, denies all meaning. All the rest are asides and additional phrases. Angel, or the devil denies meaning. Okay, devil denies meaning. So the author has defined the angel and the devil for us. It does not matter what definitions pre-exist in your mind, what they are. The angel represents creation. The devil represents the denial of meaning. That's it. That is it. There's nothing more to them. So, this time I bet you're going to do a better job when I tell you to imagine putting your finger on the most important word in that second paragraph. Because this is how you choose what to pay attention to in the passage and what to say, no, that's not important, so I'm not going to thoroughly read that. I will confess, I like big buts, and I cannot lie. When the author puts a but at the beginning of a sentence, it indicates to me something so important. So I can't believe I made it that far with a straight face. But really, difference keywords like but, yet, however, on the other hand, when they occur at the beginning of a sentence, oh my goodness, it just tells me, pay attention here. You will not believe how often that nice big but will tell you that this is where the answer to a question is later. So, yeah, all right. So, right there, I see the good of the world does not require the latter gain precedence over the former. Okay, as I thought when I was young. All it needs is a certain equilibrium of power. Right there is the author's claim of this paragraph. Need balance between the two. We need angel, devil balance. We need balance. In the rest of that paragraph, if-then statements are great, but they tend to just be evidence. So, if there's too much on blah, 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 that's just support for our claim. Don't worry about thoroughly understanding the support. We know the support is there. When a question asks, you can come back to it. We want to know that truly awesome claim, but the world needs balance. So, then going on, I like to use this next paragraph to point out an evil author trick. I said the three important keywords are difference keywords, conclusion keywords, and author's emphasis, especially when they occur for difference and conclusion at the beginning of a sentence. Here we have a therefore that's like a hidden big therefore. It's not at the beginning of the sentence, but really it should be. Any reasonable one of us would have written that as, therefore, laughter is initially the province of the devil. But no, that would make way too much sense to write it that way. These authors have to be all florid and move things around and use commas. So, that sentence really well demonstrates that's a big, important therefore. That is the most important word there. So, therefore, initially laughter is the province of the devil. So, first, laugh is the devil's. First laugh is the devil's. Yeah, my face just tends to turn red as I get worked up, and when I talk about liking big butts and not being able to lie about them. So, both of those could be the reason why I tend to get a little red. I tend, from the beginning of a 3-hour lesson to the end of a 3-hour lesson, which is our normal lessons, I'm sure bright red by the end with my hair like this by the end. That's just the way I roll. So, anyway, so, the one thing maybe you do in this is look back at that first sentence. Okay, so why is this a therefore? What's this being concluded from? Oh, laughter is the devil's because laughter was at loss of meaning. So first laugh is the devil's. Oops, didn't mean to do that. First laugh is the devil's. I'll just do this. At loss of meaning. And this is wordier than I would ever actually write down on test day. I would abbreviate it more, but I want to make sure that we have this communicated well so that you see what I'm getting out of it. The rest of it is description and support of what we mean by devil's laughter at loss of meaning and its characteristics. I come back to this paragraph if they ask me about the devil's laughter at loss of meaning in any way, shape, or form. Then we get my favorite paragraph, because you start reading this, and the first time an angel heard the devil's laughter, he was horrified. Oh God, they're telling me a story. Stories in passages are never going to be extraordinarily useful or interesting. There has to be, that story is there for a reason. Find the reason it's there. And the reason it's there is once again emphasized by an important word. If you scan through, look for it, you'll see it, because these important words tend to be like that big but at the beginning of a sentence. Whereas the devil's laughter was about the meaninglessness, the angels shout, rejoiced in how rationally organized and sensible everything on earth was. So the angels shout opposite dev laugh. I don't even need to know the story to know that that's what is said there in that sentence, and that's the important thing. So going on, this next paragraph seems useless at first. It accomplishes one thing for us. It tells us that the angels' shout is actually laughter, is another laugh. Seeing the laughing angel, the devil laughed all the harder, all the louder, all the more openly, because the laughing angel was infinitely laughable, is one of my favorite sentences to read. It's pointless other than communicating to you, oh, that angel's shout is actually laughter. So this paragraph is about a laugh-off between an angel and a devil. All right then, laugh-off. We're approaching the final paragraph of this passage. I don't have a point yet, so cross your fingers and hope they're going to give us a point here. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a reason that this author included all of this random description of laughter and angels and devils and meaningfulness and meaninglessness. So, I like this phrase, even so, right here. That's author's emphasis. And since this is the last paragraph, I do tend to read more carefully. Even so, the angels have gained something by it. Or, laughable laughter is cataclysmic. I have no idea. Even so, the angels have gained something by it. While that's important, what's really important is what they've gained and why they've gained it. So this sentence gives me nothing, but just tells me something important is coming soon. They have tricked us all with their semantic hoax. Okay, what they've gained is that they tricked us. Still don't know how. Their imitation laughter and its original, the devil's, have the same name. The trick has been named. We've been told the trick. Angels' laughter and devil's laughter both share a name. People nowadays don't even realize that one and the same external phenomenon embraces two completely contradictory internal attitudes. Last sentence is always one worth paying some attention to. There are two kinds of laughter, and we lack the words to distinguish them. So, two laughs, one word. So, why did the author write this passage? And no, it's not to torture you. No, it's not a theological passage. No, it's not because they hate medical pre-med students. Like, they wrote it to convey a point. And that point is, well, we have one word for something that is actually two different things. That is the point, that the word laughter is actually multiple different things, but we just have one word for it. Then why write all of the rest of what came before that? Well, to prove the point. By the time you get to that last paragraph, the author has made you agree, yeah, there's devil's laughter and there's angel's laughter, and now is making you agree, oh yeah, we did refer to them both as laughter, even though they're different things. So, just because the author was talking about angels and devils doesn't mean that the author was actually interested in angels and devils. This was a passage about linguistics and the word laughter, not about theology or anything like that. So, let's see how that translates to questions. as much as I love consistency of strategy, I like being able to say that you do the same thing no matter what. I can say that for the sciences. You treat passages the same way, you treat questions the same way. In cars, there is a pretty significant difference in our question approach. First and foremost, the answers are your enemy. These aren't even worth a glance at the beginning. They are the enemy, and we want to avoid them like the plague because they're there to trick, to trap, to waste your time. We want to avoid them. Then what I teach my students to do is identify the type of question. And by the way, you're all my students now, so that's why I'm teaching you this. Identify the type of question, because that tells you the way to go about answering this question. For instance, the clue about the type of question here is imply. That makes this what we call an inference question. And the AAMC, the group that is responsible for the MCAT, they actually have this breakdown of different question types and different skills they're looking at. This would be reasoning within the text, would be the skill they're looking at here. So they want to know that you can take what the author says about laughter and say what he's trying to imply about language. This isn't something where you have to read the author's mind. There are statements within this passage that relate laughter and language. That is really only the final paragraph. So you would confirm, well, in the final paragraph, the author said, there are two different types of laughter, and we lack the words to distinguish them. Now that we've said, well, that's what the author said, what does that mean? It's not exactly what was said, but what else does that mean must be true to be an inference from that statement? Now look at the answer choices and tell me which one matches. Which one must be true based on what the author said about the word laughter? All right. I love the other part of the strategy here is looking at what we call wrong answer pathologies. You guys, okay, I've got to do this. We're over 90% here. Over 90% getting a question right means I give you a star. So, the correct answer here is absolutely A. I want you to just glance at these wrong answers now after the fact. So, B is the, it's called a false use of detail. It's talking about things being deprived of their meaning. That's referring to something earlier in the passage. Language is precise and always unambiguous. That's the opposite of what was said. And this unnecessary for spiritual beings, that is out of scope. That, like, the author's not actually interested in talking about the necessity for spiritual beings. He was talking about an analogy, a story that could tell us about the language and laughter. And yeah, Ishida, generally speaking, I like to aim a little less than 4 minutes. Like 4 minutes is what I often tell my students is an upper maximum of, if you've got a good long passage, yeah, aim to take about 4 minutes. There's some passages you make it done a little faster than that. And that leaves you about, on average, a minute per question, or about 6 minutes, or 6 minutes for a set of 6 questions, which is the average for what you get with a cars passage, for a total of 10 minutes per set. I've met way too many students that spend more than 300 or 400 seconds, because the breakdown that we get on our results, that spend more than 300 or 400 seconds reading the passage and then still spend a minute per question and wonder why they ran out of time on the car section. Can't spend that long on the passage. Not enough of it is going to wind up being important to you for you to have spent that long on it. Here, which of the following forms of laughter is most similar to? So this is a application question. This is, you could call it reasoning beyond. That would be the skill that they call it. But what we need to do, we still have to always be based on the text. We say to ourselves, which paragraph described the devil's laughter to us? And we go back to that paragraph. We go back to devil's laughter. And we say, here, devil's laughter is described for us as things described suddenly of their putative meaning, the place assigned to them in the ostensible order of things, make us laugh. Therefore, or initially, therefore, laughter is the province of the devil. Has malice, but also relief. So it has good and bad, but it is at things deprived of their meaning. It is at things deprived suddenly of their meaning. With that in mind, and not bringing in any outside conceptions, you go into those answer choices and say, with what I was just told about the devil's laughter at the beginning of paragraph 3, which answer choice says that? Like, this is not major leap and bound. This is says that. So tell me, go ahead and tell me in the poll. I'm going to cross my fingers and get another gold star ready. All right, I've got another star ready for you. But this star, and I stole this from someone who I think stole it from Kristen, actually. The idea of a ninja star. The ninja star. So, the way I always call it is, the ninja star means that this question is tough, and that if you got it right, you're a ninja. You're a ninja. So, ninja star for those few of you that wound up getting this one right. The rest of you fell victim to the ninja question. Really fell victim to the ninja trap answer choice. The devil is not evil. The devil is not trying to conceal his intentions. The devil represents loss of meaning. The devil represents denying rational meaning. That is all the devil is, and any conception you bring in thinking that the devil is trying to laugh to conceal one's true intentions. That's not the devil's laughter, that's Brian's laughter. Sorry. Anyway, no. We're looking for laughter at loss of meaning. The key word there is meaning. There's one answer choice that says the word meaning, and the ninjas in the group picked up on meaning and answer choice B. So, correct answer, choose B. Don't let your outside knowledge and your outside conceptions of topics within a passage get questions wrong for you. So, don't let it trap you. There, we have an excellent example in our first cars lesson of exactly that. I always love how many students get trapped by. So we want to avoid that. Our second cars lesson. Which of the following statements would the author most likely not agree? Oh, jeez. Okay. So this is an inference question, but it's an inference question that we have to say something the author would not agree with. These types of questions are annoying. A lot of times they're best left to be the last question you do in the passage, because that is when you are most familiar with the contents of the passage. So the author would not agree. That means the 3 wrong answers are things the author would agree with. Wrong answer, we can prove the author would disagree with. I should say, the wrong answers are either things that the author would agree with, or sometimes have no opinion on. Most likely thing is he actually would agree. Maybe he would have no opinion. The wrong, or the correct answer, correct answer we can prove the author would disagree with. It's worth thinking through those things before going down to the answers, because now we are forced to use an elimination methodology here. So in the poll, go through, choose an answer based on saying, okay, the author would agree with this, would agree with this, would agree with this, would not agree with that one, and choose it. And tell me which one you choose in the poll. All right, I'm going to give you a few more seconds because you should be eliminating and narrowing it down. So you look at A, because might as well just go in order on something like this. A balance must be struck. We don't have a lot of you choosing this one because we know world needs equilibrium. That was right there. That was the second paragraph. So definitely not A. That is something with which the author would agree. But then we seem fairly torn between B, C, and D. The devil serves an important function for the good of the world. That is actually from the exact same place, the exact same idea that disproved A. How can you have balance if you don't have the irrationality? Because remember, the devil only means irrationality, meaninglessness. So it can't be B either, even though that was the answer choice with the plurality. The authors said there is an importance to both of them. So laughter is the simultaneous expression of both contradictory attitudes. Is laughter itself simultaneously both? So let's say we're looking at that and we're like, yeah, that sounds weird. Let's look at D. It's okay if you're looking at an answer and you go, I'm not sure, and you look at D. It is possible to laugh without having seen something deprived of meaning. Yeah, you're right. I can laugh non-devil's laughter. I can laugh angel's laughter. So angel's laughter would be laughing without having seen something deprived of meaning. So that eliminates D. C. Laughter is the simultaneous expression of two contradictory attitudes. The author saying the word laughter has more than one meaning is not saying laughter itself, when you laugh, has more than one meaning. When I laugh, it's not both angel's laughter and devil's laughter. No, that's not the way we laugh. Well, sometimes, but okay, only if you're the Joker do you laugh that way. That you don't laugh doing two different things at the same time. You do one laugh or the other. We just only have one word for it. So the correct answer is C. And that was a tough one. That was a really tough one. So maybe I should give you a moment, because this is according to the passage. This is a detail question. That means that the correct answer is something stated in the passage. Not necessarily in the exact same words, but it is something stated in the passage. So I just want to let you attack this one. I want to give you that opportunity to practice this. I know you're being forced to use your memory of the passage, and that's not ideal. True about the relationship between laughter and meaning. Okay, I'll point out there were two places that meaning was discussed, and I'll jump back to them for you. The two places meaning was discussed was paragraph 3. Things deprived suddenly of their putative meaning, the place assigned to them in the ostensible order of things make us laugh. Initially, therefore, laughter is the province of the devil. Meaning reference number 1. Second place that, once again, my outline tells me to go to is paragraph 6. The word laughter. There are two kinds of laughter, and we lack the words to distinguish them. So the word laughter has more than one meaning, is what's being implied in this last paragraph. So those are the two mentions of meaning we have in the passage, even if it doesn't even actually say the word meaning in that final paragraph, which maybe makes you lean towards the mention in paragraph 3. So that means, now go ahead and tell me in the poll, which of these is what the author said about laughter and meaning in paragraph 3 or paragraph 6? All right, time for another lesson on wrong answer traps. So there are a few really tempting traps here. We said that one of the statements for meaning was, devil laughed at loss of meaning, therefore laughter is initially the devil's. So the first laugh was because of the devil. Then the angel laughed in response in that narrative. So what that means is, without meaning changing, you wouldn't have gotten the devil laughing. So you wouldn't get laughter. A lot of people tend to avoid A because they're unsure of the word immutable. It means unchangeable. So laughter would not have come about if meaning couldn't change, is what A says, making A the right idea, making A the right answer. The rest of these, no way to contest the meaning of things, that's extreme. I say I disagree with the meaning of that. So there's no reason that laughter has to be the only way to contest the meaning of things. Nothing in the passage implies that at all. The word used to denote laughter itself has no meaning? No, it has at least two meanings. Having two meanings does not mean no meanings. 0 and 2 do not equal one another. So it's not C. And there are, right here, here's the problem with D. There are only two possible meanings. Only two. So only two possible meanings. What about nervous laughter? What about other types of laughter? There's no reason that the author gave that you had to restrict it to just those two meanings. The author just talks about initial laughter is the devil's, and then the angel laughed back. Any other after that? Author never goes into it, but also never says any reason they couldn't have happened. So, correct answer is A. And, now, that's the end of the questions. That's the end of the questions I have for you to practice with. But I just have to emphasize a few things right now in terms of your studies for the MCAT. Some mistakes I commonly see. This is kind of along the lines of, which is why plus coaching is at the top of the screen here. We have our plus coaching, like that giveaway we have for the selected student at the end, which fill out that form if you haven't already, so that you can maybe be selected for that hour of one-on-one coaching. Just saying, don't forget to do that really quick. One of the things we do with our plus programs is they come with 3 hours of coaching, and in that first hour, a lot of it is setting up to make sure that students are setting up their study plan well, and figuring out the best way that they in their lives can go about preparing. There's a reason why we consistently see the greatest student satisfaction from the ones in those plus programs. Just having that person with you, even just for 3 hours, helping figure that out is just awesome. I want to just give you some of the advice I give when I meet with mentoring students and with my tutoring students. First and foremost, build in a major practice component to your studying. So I always make sure my students are not just spending their time. Let's see if I can. I've got a drawer that is just so full of Kaplan books, I can't even get it open. There we go. No, 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 no. Where are they? Oh, they're over there. I can't reach them. So we've got a stack of books this big, and I always make sure students know that they are not expected, and I do not want them to go through reading those books, because we don't learn by reading. Another place your teachers lied to you in school. We don't learn by just reading. We flat out do not. I solemnly swear I am up to no good. I mean, I solemnly swear that all of the things I know, which I will be completely bashful here about this, I know a lot of things. I don't remember a single thing I ever read from a textbook in college. Not one single thing. The major ways to prepare for the MCAT, you don't sit there and open a book and read it. I used to use my textbooks to go to sleep at night because my roommate was loud. That's the best use of those textbooks. Okay, that's not the best use. The best use of textbooks and review notes. You don't want to use textbooks. You want to use something MCAT specific when preparing for the MCAT. The best use of reference books is for reference. Go look stuff up when you have a question about it, and then you remember it. I remember a lot of random stuff I've Wikipedia binged because I got curious about it. So that's the sort of stuff that is absolutely, that's memorable because you looked it up. And the way to drive those questions is through practice. If you get questions wrong in practice, then you're going to want to look it up. And when you look it up, you've got that hook of the question that helps you remember it. So I always make my students do study sandwiches. So, and I don't mean the sandwich I'm going to be going upstairs and making immediately after class is over, made of bread, cheese, and meat. I mean, you start with activation of knowledge with, I usually have our students use our review videos, which I'm totally biased towards because I made some of them. So I'm always like, watch those review videos, but they are great. So I have them do some quick hit with some content, whether it's flashcarding or a review video or even an hour-long channel session. Then I say, once you've done that, then practice that content. Do questions on it. And then as you review every single question you ever did, because the focus should be on questions, you're going to remember more things from the questions we did than if I had just put up text and said, read this text. What they do is they review every single question. They say, I didn't learn these things well enough, apparently, because I didn't know the knowledge necessary to answer these questions. So then they go up, look at that knowledge and study it with a proper context and reason for it. This is in contrast to if they get a question wrong and they realize, you know, I got that question wrong, but I realized I actually knew the content. I just didn't remember it when I needed it and apply it the way I should have. That's a strategic thing and not a content thing. And that means you can't fix that by reading more. You can't fix that by looking something up. That can only be fixed through improved practice. That's why we focus on drills and realistic practice and having our students have so many full-length practice tests that they have access to. So you want to have access to at least 6. We get all 3 of the AAMC tests we buy for our students along with all the other AAMC resources. And we also provide them with another 11. So there are 14 full-length tests that our students have access to, just because that practice is absolutely essential. And I mean, if you wind up having a Kaplan teacher that you can tap as a source of expertise, go for it. If you just have a friend that's a chemistry major who you think can really well explain explain effective nuclear charge to you, go for it. Tap those sources of expertise, though. Force them. And try and become an expert on something to explain to someone else. I've learned things the best when I learned them for the sake of teaching them. That was really when I went from not liking physics so much to being a teacher in North Philadelphia in a school that needed a physics teacher and going, you know what, I'll study up on physics again, I'll take that test and I'll start teaching it. I went from hating physics to, wow, this makes a lot of sense because I'm learning it to understand it. I love this stuff now. So just learning it to teach somebody else is great. So the worst thing, though, your textbooks. You probably have a pile of textbooks almost as tall as I am that you don't want to crack open at all in your MCAT preparation. They have too much extraneous information that just does not help. All right, now, I want to talk generally about resources and practice and what you want to be doing and what you want to be taking from Kaplan, because we have lots of different resources you can use, free resources and otherwise. So, one, as I mentioned, that personal coach that we get with the Plus program, having somebody help you personally set up your study plan and work through just a few of the really high yield things with you, or help you figure out how to study something, I'm telling you, I've been convinced by seeing the results in my classes of students who get that and how happy they always are at the end. So I'm just saying that that's really great. Those students also get access to the foundations programs we have, which are meant for students who don't have the biochem, psych, or soc in terms of coursework, and don't need to just brush up on it, because our course is designed to review, assuming you've had the class and maybe didn't learn it particularly well, but had the class and we're reviewing it, versus never seen it before and need to teach it. The foundations in biochemistry, psych, and soc, those are meant as, these are to teach you from the ground up about those topics. But this is where I get into my master's in education and curriculum and instruction with science education emphasis side of things. I personally and professionally have the opinion that the way Kaplan has designed its MCAT resources is stellar in terms of the combination of live instruction and practice, the way that you get to choose from a wide variety, a large amount of live instruction. You get instruction and strategy. You get to pick and choose the instruction you need in terms of content. Our MCAT channel is awesome, and I'll be talking about that, but it allows you to target what you need, and having that flexibility of what you're targeting is essential. But it must be prepared. It must be paired with practice. We set the goal when the MCAT 2015 was coming out. We called it the MCAT 5K. We wanted 5,000 practice items. We're now above 10,000 because we know how important practice items are. They are absolutely essential. Mona Lisa with a mustache. Okay, does that mean I need to shave or I need to let it keep growing? I can't decide. I can't decide there. I actually let it grow for a little while there, but I was more beardy, and it wasn't, and the mustache was there too. But now the mustache is more emphasized. All right, so I do want to talk about Mona Lisa. Nice. So I want to talk about the MCAT channel, because the MCAT channel I am thrilled with. The guy pictured right there, Eli. I literally just worked with him last weekend. I was off camera and he was on camera teaching, and I've been at this for coming up on 8 years now. Eli's been at it for longer than I have. I still love watching him teach. Like, we just had so much fun, and those students learned. We left that class. It was a DAT class, not an MCAT class, because we all teach a lot of the different pre-med courses. But that guy's awesome, and he teaches so much of our MCAT channel. We teaches so much of the different, or we have a lot of different teachers that are truly awesome teach the MCAT channel. They are some of my favorite people to watch. They are some of my favorite people to work with. And I am on camera teaching a lot. When I'm off camera teaching, or off camera watching somebody else teach, I love watching them and stealing as much as I can, because teachers are the worst plagiarists. We steal from each other all the time. So these MCAT channel sessions are from the best Kaplan teachers from around the country, and they are focused on high yield content. And I helped write some of the new lessons we just added that are really good at building up the foundations that a lot of students come in shaky in chemistry and physics and organic chemistry that are being added in there. I'm a huge fan of this because it has made such a difference for so many students. So just had to emphasize that. It's nightly MCAT TV with Kaplan. Sometimes people refer to it as MCAT Netflix, but I'm like, while we do have an on-demand library for it, the live part, which Netflix isn't live, the live part is really the awesome thing to do. So then, as I've emphasized, practice. If you're at all considering Kaplan, please, 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 do not go buy the AAMC materials, because we buy them all for our students. We buy all of the AAMC materials for our students. So please, don't buy them and then decide to go with Kaplan, because then you've used money on something you didn't need to use it on. So we have the AMC materials, and then we have just a wide variety of our own materials that we've developed. You must have practice. Too many students try and study by studying the traditional way, studying from a book, study by taking notes. You have to be studying through practice. It is essential, and we know that, and that's why we include so much practice material. So then what you do is you use your results from your practice to guide your instruction. We have something called smart reports. We have like computers analyze you, all that fun stuff. But the main thing is that you want to learn about you. Study yourself as a subject. Study yourself as what questions do I tend to get wrong? What can I change to maybe lead to getting less of those questions wrong? Make that change and see whether it happens. And I've mentioned a couple times that I am sometimes on camera, sometimes off camera. I'm referring specifically to live online teaching when I do that, because that's where I do all of my teaching anymore. Live online teaching is in an online classroom where I am on a camera, talking to my students, interacting with my students, having them make fun of my mustache or my hair turning red, anything like that. I really enjoy working online because the students are just so much more fun. I find myself being more interactive with them online than I am in person even. But the best part is that those off-camera teachers, like you've been talking with a few of them. I'll point out, I'll just go with picking on Ari because I've worked with her a good number of times as just an awesome teacher I've worked with off camera who's just been amazing to work with and is so helpful to all the students. So the off-camera teachers they're my favorite feature of teaching online. The in-person classes are actually the exact same curriculum, the exact same thing, except it's in person, and you only have the one teacher there in person with you. But otherwise, all the exact same stuff. Self-paced is a recorded version of the class, and you do have email support from the instructor, but it is not the live classes. It is just the recorded versions of the classes. With the plus option, you get access to the MCAT channel archives. And most important thing I can point out here about tutoring is that tutoring comes with the class. Every time I work with a tutoring student, I make sure that they are also attending, that they're also doing the class. So it's not just me going over the stuff in class. It's not just me going over the stuff that they could get from class. It's me going richer and deeper into that. So I'm still, with it being this long, and I've actually had long hair for a very long time, I'm still not quite good at a hair flip. It winds up like this. I got to do that for the hair flip. So, and here's course options that breaks all of that down. But if you have questions about course options, ask us, and we can help you figure out which one would be the best for you. And I will emphasize now, because we are coming up when students are thinking about their summer plans, our intensive programs are intense. We call this event that we're in right now the MCAT Bootcamp. This is really boot camp. Like the Kaplan summer intensive program, and we do have a winter intensive program. This is boot camp. This is you are eating, sleeping, living, breathing MCAT during this boot camp. It is awesome, and it is a major commitment. And it's basically a semester of college dedicated to the MCAT. So that is something to ask us about. If that sounds like, I think I might need that, ask us about All right, and the thing I like to emphasize here is that as a teacher, I live I don't live vicariously, but I measure my success through the success of my students. That's what it means to be a teacher. Kaplan, as an education program, survives through the success of its students. So we want our students to be successful. We want them to recommend us to their friends. And so we are committed to them. And when we express that commitment through what we call the higher score guarantee. This, in one part, the loudest part and the one that catches everybody's attention is higher score guaranteed or your money back. If your score goes down, you can have your money back. But if you fulfill the requirements, which include doing your homework and coming to class, scores incredibly rarely go down. Like, scores go up if you do the things you're supposed to do. So there aren't many people that would ever qualify for it if it was just that. But there's two more parts to it. If you don't feel ready as test day is approaching, or if you went in and tested and your score went up, but you weren't happy with how much it went up, you can take the class again for free. Take the class again for free, and that's okay. You can just do it, and we will help you prepare because we want you to succeed. That is our commitment to our students. All right, so last couple things I have to do here. You should see the link here for book an appointment with a teacher, book a consultation with a teacher. If you want to be able to talk with somebody one-on-one without it being through text in the chat or anything like that, you feel like you need help talking to somebody, please book an appointment with a teacher. We actually, I have Aishwarya. If anybody just wants help figuring out or enrolling, she says that she's around and she would just help anybody enroll that's interested. So you could also just do that, and I can send you straight to her. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, wait a second, yeah. Before we go to the giveaway and the selected student is Kaplan's financial aid programs. So Kaplan has a program called the Starting Line. We were started by a guy named Stanley Kaplan. Stanley Kaplan wanted to get more students into college. He started a business where he was teaching students to do better on the SAT at a time when people thought standardized tests were not something that could be prepared for, that they were just measured ability levels. He proved them wrong. Good old Stanley proved everybody who thought that about the SAT wrong by showing that you definitively could prepare a student for the SAT, and he got kids into college. And we have, as a company, tried to maintain that goal of getting more students into college and into post-grad programs. And one way we do that is through what we call the Starting Line program. If you have a given GPA and a given expected family contribution on your FAFSA, you can be eligible for up to 60% off the price of a course. So that's one option. If you have a expected family contribution below 4,000, I believe, and a GPA above 3.0, though it then, based on your specifics there, determines how much you would get. So that's one option. If you don't qualify for that, you can at least do a couple other things. So, number one, join the American Medical Student Association. It costs, I believe, somewhere around $75. But it gets you, I believe, 10% off the price of a class. So it saves you more than it costs. It saves you more than it costs. And you can stack. It's one of the only things that we have that can stack with this other code that I am about to give you for being here today. You can use the code MKGL 181138, and that will get you $200 off the price of the class. So that's $200 off plus the 10% off you can get off from being an AMSA member. That's not as good as the up to 60% off you can get from the Starting Line tuition assistance program. So first, if you think you qualify for starting line, try for that. If you know you don't, definitely use those codes. But that code is only good for a week. That code, the MKGL 181138, is only good for a week. I want everyone who thinks that they're at least at all interested at all interested to be able to go through that, to be able to save that. Oh, and I was just notified that we have a sale that actually is still going today and I thought had ended. We have a save 300 will save you $300 off instead of 200. Even better. But that ends today. That MKGL 181138 would be good for a week. That save 300 ends today. Okay, so keep that in. That has to be now, though. That would have to be now, though. So consider those. Consider the starting line program. They'll get back to you by tomorrow, but that won't be soon enough for that Save 300 program. All right. Then I guess it's time to select our lucky student, isn't it? So, want to emphasize, this student will is selected to receive a 1-hour coaching with a Kaplan teacher, and they'll get that teacher's email and set up a meeting to do an hour of coaching that can be setting up a study plan, going over some problem or some topic that you really struggle with, an hour of coaching with the Kaplan teacher. And yeah, so let's go ahead and select that student and we'll announce who it is. Darn. My drumsticks. My son must have stolen them and they're over on my drum set. I was going to go get my drumsticks and do a drum roll for us. That better? I hope you can hear that. So, drum roll, please. And the winner is, I'm waiting for it to come up here as I'm drawing it out. I'm trying to find a good place to do a drum roll that my wedding ring doesn't tap. There we go. Let me grab this. Where is it? There we go. Yeah, we're grabbing it. Hold on a minute. Okay, while we grab that, as everybody's gotten their hopes up, like, I'm going to be the student. I'll also answer some common questions. I already said the 300 to 350 hours. One of the major questions is, how bad is it to retake the MCAT? So the number of times you want to take the MCAT is... The number of times you want to take the MCAT is however many times you've taken it right now, plus 1 if you do not have a satisfactory score right now. That is what you want to aim for, and you don't want to go beyond that, really. You don't want to plan on, well, I'll go do my best and see where I do from there. You want to go based upon, am I ready? Go in and test, and that's it. You don't go like, I might be ready. Let's hope Slumdog Millionaire happens to me and I happen to get every passage. You go in, oh, I didn't do so well, I'll test again. No, that is not the goal that you want to have. That's not the goal you want to have. And meanwhile, prize link. All right, the winner is. Now we actually have someone this time. And they have to be here. So we might all get let down if this person's gone, and then we'll pick somebody else. First call is for Andrea Coelho. So Andrea Coelho, if you're there, say hello, talk to us in the chat. Andrea Coelho. If she doesn't respond in a few moments, we'll choose somebody else. All right. Moving on then. Could still be you. Might not be, but could be. Next we have. There we go. That's a better roll. Tiffany Ming. Tiffany Ming, if you're still here, talk to us in the chat. Oh, Andrea is here. So Andrea, since she was pulled first, we'll go with Andrea as we got her response. So Andrea is here. Talk to us in the chat. All right. We are now right about at the 11:30. Taking a look. 300s. Congrats, Andrea. And no, just because you didn't get picked, that doesn't mean we're trying not to choose you and we don't love you. We love all of our students, but it's like the Highlander. There can be only one. So, all right. So, it has been wonderful being here with you. This event, the boot camp, is one of my favorite things. We do have a lot of other events. We have a lot of other events in general going on right now, and we constantly have MCAT events going. So don't forget that we do have other events you can attend. We have other sample classes. We have free practice tests. So please take a look, take any free stuff from us that you can. All right. I have been Brian Brightbill and Brian Brightbill's hair. I hope to see you in the future, and best of luck to you. Best of luck to you in your MCAT preparations. All right. Have a nice night.